They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned the hard way that greed is thicker than both. The day I watched my cousins laugh while signing papers that stole my grandmother's farm from under me, something inside me broke. But what they didn't know was that broken things can be rebuilt, stronger, sharper, and hungry for justice. Let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Jake Morrison, and I grew up on 60 acres of pure heaven in rural Missouri. My grandmother, Helen Morrison, wasn't just the owner of that farm, she was its soul. Every morning at sunrise, I'd find her in the kitchen, flour on her apron, humming old country songs while baking bread. The smell of fresh earth after rain, the sound of chickens clucking in the yard, the sight of golden wheat swaying in the wind. That farm wasn't just property. It was every good memory I had of childhood, wrapped up in soil and sunshine. Grandma Helen raised me after my parents died in a car crash when I was 8. My cousins, Derek and Michelle, lived in Chicago with their father, Grandma's other son, Uncle Richard. They visited maybe twice a year, always at Christmas and Thanksgiving, always with their hands out for Grandma's gifts and her cooking. But they never stayed to help with the harvest, never got their hands dirty fixing fences or feeding animals. To them, the farm was just a vacation spot with free food. I stayed. I chose a small college nearby so I could help Grandma every day. I learned every inch of that land, where the soil was richest, which trees needed trimming, how to coax the old tractor into starting on cold mornings. Grandma would pat my cheek and say, "Jake, you've got farmer's hands and a farmer's heart. This land knows you love it." When I turned 25, I started my own tech company with my best friend Marcus. It was a risk, but it paid off bigger than I ever imagined. Within 3 years, we developed software that hospitals across the country wanted. Money started flowing in, serious money. But I never forgot where I came from. Every weekend, I drove back to the farm. I installed new irrigation systems, fixed up the old barn, and made sure Grandma never wanted for anything. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning when Uncle Richard called. His voice was tight, fake sad. "Jake, it's about your grandmother. She's in the hospital. You need to come now." I broke every speed limit getting there. Grandma had suffered a stroke. The doctors said it was severe. She couldn't speak, could barely move her right side. But her eyes, those sharp blue eyes, were still alert, still fighting. I held her hand and whispered, "I'm here, Grandma, I'm not going anywhere." Derek and Michelle showed up that evening, dressed like they were attending a business meeting instead of visiting their dying grandmother. Michelle hugged me with all the warmth of a handshake, and Derek patted my shoulder like we were strangers at a funeral. Over the next 2 weeks, I practically lived at that hospital. I read to Grandma, played her favorite music, told her stories about the farm. Derek and Michelle, they visited for an hour each day, spent most of it on their phones, then left to rest at a hotel. Not once did they offer to stay the night. Not once did they cry. Grandma passed away on a Sunday morning with my hand in hers. The last thing she did was squeeze my fingers 3 times, our secret code for "I love you." The funeral was small, beautiful. I buried her on a hillside overlooking the farm she loved. I planted a dogwood tree at her grave because those were her favorite. I thought that would be the end of the hardest chapter of my life. I was wrong. 3 days after the funeral, Uncle Richard invited me to his lawyer's office in Kansas City. "Just to go over Helen's will," he said. "Nothing complicated." I should have known better. The lawyer, a thin man named Gerald Hoffman with a smile like a snake, sat behind a massive desk. Derek and Michelle were already there, looking way too comfortable. Uncle Richard gestured to a chair. "Sit down, Jake. This won't take long." Hoffman cleared his throat. "I'll get right to it. Helen Morrison's will leaves her entire estate, including the farm and all assets, to be divided equally among her 2 sons' children. That means Derek, Michelle, and Jake each receive 1/3. My stomach dropped. "Wait, what? Grandma always said the farm would be mine. She promised me." Michelle smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, Jake, promises aren't legal documents, are they?" Derek leaned back in his chair. "Look, we know you're emotional right now, but this is what Grandma wanted. It's in writing." "That's impossible. I was with her every day. She told me." Uncle Richard cut me off. "Jake, my mother was elderly and unwell. Sometimes people say things they don't mean. The will was updated 2 years ago, and it's perfectly legal. My hands shook. 2 years ago? I never knew about any update. Hoffman slid papers across the desk. Everything is in order, Mr. Morrison. Now your cousins have made a generous offer. They're willing to buy out your third of the farm. You'd receive cash, and they'd take over full ownership. Buy me out? That farm is my home. Michelle sighed like I was being unreasonable. Jake, be realistic. You're a tech guy now. You don't need a farm. Take the money, keep building your company. We'll handle the property. Handle it? You mean sell it to some developer and split the profit? Derek's jaw tightened. That's our business decision to make. 2/3 ownership beats your 1/3. You can either take our offer or we'll make decisions without you. I looked at each of their faces, cold, calculating, greedy. These were the people who'd eaten at Grandma's table, who'd accepted her love and generosity, and now they were spitting on her memory. I'm not selling. Uncle Richard's face hardened. Then you're making this difficult for everyone. We have majority ownership. We can outvote you on every decision. We can force a sale of the property through the courts if necessary. They had me trapped, and they knew it. Over the next 6 months, they made my life hell. Every decision about the farm went through a vote, and I lost every time. They hired a property management company that treated the land like a commodity. They started accepting bids from developers. They were going to auction off Grandma's farm piece by piece. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I'd built a successful company, made millions, but I couldn't save the one place that mattered most. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat, dreaming about bulldozers tearing through Grandma's garden. I'd see her face in every corner of that farmhouse, hear her voice in every creaking floorboard. The worst part was driving past the property and seeing strangers measuring the land, developers walking the fields with clipboards, treating 60 acres of my history like it was just another transaction. My friends told me to let it go. It's just land, Jake, they'd say. But they didn't understand. It wasn't just land. It was the place where Grandma taught me to tie my shoes, where I learned to ride a bike, where she held me when I cried about missing my parents. Every fence post had a memory attached to it. Every tree held a piece of my childhood. One night, I sat in my apartment staring at an old photo of Grandma and me standing in front of the barn. I was maybe 10 years old, covered in dirt, grinning like I'd just won the lottery. She had her arm around me, and the look on her face was pure love. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to let them erase her. I wasn't going to let greed win. Then Marcus, my business partner, said something that changed everything. Jake, you're thinking about this wrong. They're playing a money game, so play it better. What do you mean? You're rich, man. Really rich. They think they've won because they have majority ownership, but ownership doesn't matter if you have something they want more. An idea started forming. Dangerous, expensive, perfect. I hired a private investigator. Within 2 weeks, I had proof that the will had been changed under suspicious circumstances. Uncle Richard had visited Grandma repeatedly when she was on heavy medications. The signatures looked shaky, possibly forged. But proving it in court would take years, and by then, the farm would be gone. So I took a different approach. The auction was scheduled for a Saturday in late September, exactly 1 year after Grandma's death. Derek and Michelle had divided the farm into 3 parcels to maximize profit. The main house and 40 acres, the barn and equipment on 15 acres, the remaining 5 acres with the hillside where Grandma was buried. I showed up wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, looking like just another local farmer. Derek and Michelle were there in expensive suits, glad-handing potential buyers, already counting their money. I watched Michelle laugh with a developer, pointing toward Grandma's house like it was nothing more than an obstacle to be demolished. Derek was on his phone, probably already planning how to spend his share. The auctioneer started with the smallest parcel, the hillside. Bidding started at $50,000. Someone bid $60,000. Another voice called $75,000. I raised my paddle. $200,000. Heads turned. Michelle's face went pale. The auctioneer looked shocked but called, $200,000. Anyone else? Silence. Sold to paddle number 47. Derek rushed over. Jake, what are you doing? Buying back what's mine. His face went red. You can't afford the other parcels. Watch me. The barn and equipment came up next. Bidding started at $300,000. I let it climb to $450, then called out, $1 million. Michelle actually gasped. Jake, stop! You're being insane. Am I, or am I just playing the game you started? The main house was last. Starting bid, $500,000. A developer bid $600. Another went to $750. I could see Derek and Michelle whispering frantically, calculating numbers, realizing what was about to happen. I waited until they thought they'd won, then raised my paddle one final time. $2 million. The crowd went silent. The auctioneer stammered through the countdown. Sold! I just spent over $3 million in one afternoon. Derek and Michelle stood frozen, their mouths open like dead fish. I walked up to them slowly. You wanted to sell Grandma's farm? Congratulations. You got your money, but the farm stays in the family, in my hands, where Grandma wanted it all along. Uncle Richard, who'd been watching from the back, approached with fury in his eyes. You little... Careful, I said quietly. I have lawyers too, good ones, and they've been looking into how that will got changed. You want to walk away with your share of today's money, or do you want to explain to a judge why Grandma's signature looks forged? His face went white. He grabbed Derek and Michelle and practically dragged them out. I never heard from them again. The money I paid them, worth every single penny. Some people think I was crazy to spend millions on property I technically already owned a third of, but they didn't understand what I was really buying. I was buying back my childhood, my memories, my grandmother's legacy. I was buying justice. I spent the next year restoring the farm exactly the way Grandma had kept it. I hired local workers who loved the land. I turned part of it into an organic farm that supplies restaurants across Missouri. The profits, they go into a scholarship fund for kids who want to study agriculture. Kids like I was, who understand that some things in life matter more than money. Every Sunday, I sit on the hillside by Grandma's grave and tell her about my week. The dogwood tree I planted has grown strong and healthy. Its branches reach toward the sky like arms embracing the wind. Sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear her humming those old country songs. Here's what I learned. Family isn't about shared blood. It's about shared love and respect. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't about hurting people who wronged you. It's about protecting what they tried to destroy and building something beautiful from the ashes of their greed. Grandma taught me that love planted in good soil always grows back stronger than hate. Now I want to ask you something. If someone you trusted betrayed you over money, would you choose revenge or would you choose to rebuild what they tried to take? Share your answer in the comments below.